It's time to replace the brake pads on my 2008 KLR. So we're going to go through that process front and rear. And we're using Galfer black pads. You can see that for the Gen 2, the pads are mirror images. These are the front pads, these are the rear. So we'll go through the process here. What we've got are two fixing bolts and then two pins right here. These are the pins that hold the brake pads into the caliper, and then we've got a bracket here that's holding the brake line. So we're going to go ahead and take off that bracket first. We want to be able to swing the caliper free once we get everything off. Before we pull the caliper off, we're going to go ahead and crack these things loose. It's easier to do it right now than when you've got it in your hand. And then we'll go ahead and pull these off. They've got a little bit of thread lock on them from the factory, so they're a little stubborn. Trying to get them off with your fingers. This bike's got about 19,300 miles on it, so it'll be interesting to see what kind of shape the pads are in. Don't know if they're down to the wear limit or not. This is the first time I've done this on this bike. They don't look all that bad. They're a little worn. Oops, wrong one. So we'll pull the pins out a little bit. And the first thing we want to do is get this fixed pad out of the way. Got to get the pin out first. And it's a little stubborn. There we go, I think. One more whap. Alright, now that brings out that pad. You can see that it's not down to the wear limit yet, but it's getting close. While I've still got the floating pad in there, I want to retract the caliper. So what I've done is put a C-clamp on top of the pad, put a little block of wood on the back, and I'm just going to squeeze this and retract the calipers. That's going to make it a lot easier to assemble this thing with the new thicker pads. This is a twin piston caliper, so I've got to kind of work it from side to side to get both of them retracted. And they'll bottom out. You'll feel them bottom out when it gets fully retracted. And that just about does it right there, I think. Once more on this side. And that's all good. Now I can go ahead and retract these pins all the way back. And we should be able to get that pad out now. There we go. It looks about the same as the other side. Not quite done yet, but getting down there. To install the new pads, you drop this down in against the spring that's in the bottom. It's a little leaf type spring in the bottom of the caliper. Press down and then slide the pin in. Make sure it goes through the hole in the plate of the brake pad. Once you get them through, then you just simply pop it into place like that. Take the next pad, rotate it around this stud at the top, rotate it down into place, press, and push these pins through. Take your Allen wrench. Oops, keep grabbing the wrong one. And just get those pins started in the threads. And you can take your Allen wrench and just pry them gently apart like that so that it's flush here. This one is pretty well snapped down inside. And then we bring it over and hopefully it'll just slide right in there since we retracted the calipers a bit. Get it all lined up. Pop these two bolts back in. You can move the caliper around to find the threaded hole. It's pretty easy to do. Now that that's in place, we can go ahead and get these things run all the way down. They simply bottom out in the hole. Give it a good little torquing. Later on, there is a torque spec for these. We'll go back, or I'll go back, off camera I presume, and get the torques right on those things. That makes sure everything is home free. Now the last thing we want to do here is pull these back out, put just a little dab of blue thread sealant on it, replace what came from the factory. Hey, this is a new tube. I haven't cut the end off yet. Sorry peeps, we don't promise top quality video production here. Just a little bit of blue thread, a little bit. Put that in, pull this one back out, and a little dab will do ya. Back in she goes. And again, these have torque specs, and we'll make sure that we properly do that. And then the last thing to make sure we put back on is the little bracket. That's all there is to it. Once I've got it properly torqued, I'll be done. Okay, the spec on these things is 12 foot-pounds, which is just about 144 inch-pounds. So we'll run that up to about 150. And again, the torque on the caliper mounting bolts is 25 foot-pounds. So we're going to run those up to about an equivalent in inch-pounds. And that's all good, so she shouldn't fall off. We're back here at the root end of the bike, and it's the same caliper essentially as the front, as you might guess from the fact that it's got mirror image pads and everything. So it's mounted very similarly. Here's the two mounting bolts, and there is a bracket here that holds the brake line that's in the way. So we'll get this out of the way first, then we'll pop these two off. And of course the same rules apply to the back. Loosen these up. Get these bolts out. They're fairly short, of course. And then we can get this caliper off. And it looks very, very similar. So we've still got to get these pins retracted fully. Takes a few seconds to get these fully out of the threads. You can tell when they don't come out anymore. I think that's it. There we go. Of course, this pad, let's see, did it get clear? I think it's clear. There, yeah, it's clear. It fell out. Ooh, that is really, really worn down. That is almost to the wear limit. I can barely feel that groove with my fingernail. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and compress the pistons, and that one looks pretty well worn too. Let me compress the pistons and I'll be back. Alright, here's a comparison of the old stock pad, worn down as you can see, to the new pad. So you can see how much material difference there is. So it's a good thing I got here when I did, because it looks like I was just about done. It was even starting to rub a little bit here on the bracket. So I guess we can stick a fork in these. They were pretty well used up. The assembly process, of course, is virtually identical to what we did on the front. Get these pins started. And they are started. There we go. Got that seated. And sit that on the pivot, rotate it down, hold it in with our thumb, and drive those through. And then we can go ahead and run these things in. Until they are home free. And then we will again set up the pads so that we've got some room between them. They seem to be seated down. Slide that up to the rotor. Of course, I can't see what I'm doing, so it makes it a little difficult. Okay, I had to retract the pistons just a little bit more. And so that's offered up. Hopefully it'll sit there. Once again, we're going to put a little dab of thread sealer on. And go ahead and torque these back to the 25 foot-pound spec. Kind of doing this the Polish way. Even though I'm not Polish, I sometimes act Polish. This is the kind of stuff I usually do when nobody's looking. And there we go. And now we need 12 foot-pounds on the little pins. And she's done. The only thing left to do is pump the brake to get the piston seated back out. You saw how long that took. Bye.